Assalamu alaikum, guys. So I just wanted to share some thoughts on something Zizek said during the Jordan Peterson-Zizek debate. He said basically that that Dostoevsky got it wrong when he said, through one of his characters, he said, if there is no God, everything is permitted. And he said, well, it's actually the opposite of that. If there is a God, everything is permitted. Now, this is a sleight of hand to misunderstand what's really the issue here, particularly with atheism. And I think atheists have to be honest about the consequences of their worldview, just as Nietzsche was, Hume was. I mean, there were many intelligent atheists who could see logically the consequences of their denial of a transcendent power of God and what that leads to. And I think atheists need to be honest about it. What Zizek is doing here is a sleight of hand. You see, when Dostoevsky said, if there is no God, everything is permissible, what he means is that there is no metaphysical foundation for any moral prohibitions. In other words, there is no authority, there is no reason, binding reason, I should say. There is no binding reason upon humanity why we can't do something, okay? And the only thing that's preventing us are things like social stigma and whatever consequences, like things like that. But there's no metaphysical reason why we shouldn't just do whatever we want, even if it's unutterably evil. When he says that if God exists, when Zizek was saying if God exists, then everything is permitted, what he really means is that if God exists, then one can use God as a justification to do whatever they want, okay? The only way that argument makes sense is if, as I said before, the existence of God is the foundation for moral duties and responsibilities and prohibitions and so forth. If God is irrelevant to the picture, then what difference would it make? That's number one. Number two, he's confusing what people do in practice with what we're talking about, which is the metaphysical foundation through which you do anything, for which you get any kind of morals. So what you'll find is that religious people sometimes will twist scripture to be able to say what they want it to say in order to do what they want to do. However, this isn't a moral condition to do whatever you want. I mean, once again, in that debate, they were debating socialism, and Zizek didn't deny the atrocities that happened under the Soviet state. So there you can have a group of atheists do unutterably speakable things because there are no moral prohibitions. Then you can have a group like ISIS, which will do immoral things and, selectively quote and twist and whatever scripture in order to be able to justify what they're doing. That exists, right? I admit that exists. However, he's still wrong. He's still wrong. The reason is because even under ISIS, okay, you still had moral prohibitions. So if God exists, not everything is permitted, right? No religion has, none of the major world religions, no scripture has ever said everything is permitted. So where he's getting that from, I have no idea. What scripture can allow you to do is to commit a moral atrocity and to sanctify it, to claim that it was moral and to claim that it was, okay. But you'll never get with scripture, unless you simply erase half of it, rid of moral prohibitions. And so no, even under ISIS, there were things that were morally prohibited or whatever, right, on the basis of what scripture said. You don't get that on atheism. So Zizek, nice sleight of hand. You switched from metaphysics to the practical, and even on the practical, you got it wrong, right? Even on the practical, you got it wrong. If God exists, you cannot do anything. Right? So again, when we say if God exists, we mean if a scripture is true. Because if God just exists as a deistic God up there in the abstract, who cares? We're talking about a God that gives moral commands. If we're talking about a God who gives moral commands, who reveals scripture, then no. Under no circumstances, even the most twisted regime, is everything morally okay. There's always going to be prohibitions. I hope that makes sense.